Well, hello there, everybody. Just tell you what, if you're ever looking to get into a better vibration, just put some JJ Kale on. I'm going to tell you what, you will become happy. It's good music. So welcome everybody. It is, I think Wednesday is supposed to be dedicated to Odin. Odin, I believe. Yeah. So anyway, it's Wednesday. Some call it hump day. Some just call it another day. But thank you for being here. It is a true joy to be amongst such brilliant minds and thinkers. Let me just speak favor over us all. Nothing missing, nothing broken. And speaking of which, hello, Cass. How are you, sweetie? Good to see you. Uh, see you amongst the chat room. That's just we have been sending you abundance of love and favor, and it goes all the time, Kaz. So we love you. Good to see you. And hello, Nina. What's up, Paul? Paul, good to see you in DC. And hello, Deborah. How are you doing? Shirley, how are you doing? Saw your some of your comments. You know, Shirley, I would say this about knowledge. You see, knowledge, it's really what you do with it. Knowledge taught you how to cook, but there are some people who only want a little knowledge about how to cook. There are some who want in-depth knowledge about how to cook. And then there's those who even see it deeper than that because they see that it's a certain alchemy. And so the knowledge begins to work hand in hand. Now, will this knowledge help you during the day? Yeah, it will. Will it help you put food on the table? Yeah, it will. It's really a matter as to what do you want to do with it. This knowledge can make you rich, really rich. This knowledge can help you basically produce, as I was talking to a young gentleman today in the grocery store. Um, there is hope for the generation coming up. That knowledge is the it's the tools. I mean, if you don't know how to use a tool, for instance, if you don't know how to use a saw, there's different types of saws. The point is that it can literally change your life. So anyway, that's just my take, Shirley. Again, sweetie, thank you for being here. And Goddess Sabina says, heavy rain in my side of the woods. Oh, well, let's hope that it's just enough, not too much. So anyway, Shirley, that's just my thought. I thought in that. Nina, thought your answer was appropriate as well. Go, good to see you all the way from Croatia. Jackie, much love to you, darling. Lost in Space, what's up? Hello, voiceover. Stephanie, good to see you, dear. Lori, what's up? And everybody else. So, some observations. We're talking in the subject, and remember, the Book of Enoch is connected to this whole thing about reincarnation. I mean, if reincarnation plays, then how does that play out with the gods? We saying that the gods are immortal and so reincarnation doesn't affect them. But it's real interesting because one of the things I learned in my Bible studies being taught that the book of Psalms clearly states that this God will die just like Adam. Maybe a much longer time frame, but apparently death is a reality for the gods. Now, was that because this God is not the supreme? We know that this God sits on a council. If you believe the narrative, you know, and then to what you believe, well, so dealing in the reincarnation aspect, we have to begin to figure out, well, then, all right, so let's read the story of our ancestors. Supposedly, you know, I've never seen the original book, but I've never seen the original book of any book that I thought was the book. It was just mind coins, mind manipulation. And so, talking about Enoch, now, Enoch opens up the doors to number one, extraterrestrials. I mean, do I really believe that these are angelic beings? No. I believe that's a name that we gave them or they told us, and I don't think you can trust them. Just me. But it brings into a time of humanity when there was some weird strangeness going on. In fact, the prophecy says, as the days of Noah shall it be in the end times. Well, to fully grasp and understand if that prophecy is to come to pass, well, it would probably be advantageous for one to study, well, what the hell do you mean in the time of Noah? What are you referencing? Because the vast majority of people, you know why they don't believe this stuff? I mean, it's right there in their face. They won't believe it. But for those of us who like the knowledge, because, all right, so what was it like in the time of Noah? As I said, I've never seen an original book of anything. And so when I read these books, the Apocrypha, the pseudo, whatever you want to call it, it's worth checking into. I love studying history anyway. Library shelves are full of it. And you have to learn, any student of history has to take it from the eyes of the individual who's writing the story. And quite frankly, I don't know any human who's known any of these cats. I mean, they can be complete assholes. How would you know? If you could meet, let's say, some dude that wrote, one of the books in the so-called canonical Bible. I mean, that guy was probably an absolute asshole. And then if you'd actually met him in real life, you wouldn't believe this shit. Hell no. You would say that asshole would write anything to make a buck. Besides that, he's fucking weird, man. Seriously. So we get into the study of this, and this is what makes it fun because well, let's say that this knowledge survived, fragments of it. Well, let's say enough of it survived that if it was added to, then the person may have been channeling the person who wrote it. And now that person can move on because you get where I'm going. But that channeling thing. But the story seems to have a continuity to it, to other beliefs around the globe, because God, the whole creator of the universe, right, is only in this little geographical area on the planet. Really? I mean, the planet's pretty big. And if you do any type of study, you realize there were other people doing their thing all over this globe. Didn't have anything to do with this little tiny area. But anyway, that's where we are. So on with the story. One little observation before we go. We're in a different energy. I'll put it that way. And I want to point this out because I believe I'm going to be the first one to point this out. So I'm watching what's happening with the politics. Now, for me, I enjoyed that game. I mean, it's exciting. The connections you meet are phenomenal. And if you're good at it, really good at it, you can go places with it. It was never my desire to do that. But in any case, I'm an observer of something. Now, I'm just going to lay this out. You see, the thing that, and I'm not a Republican anymore, I'm an independent, but you have two different dichotomies of the same coin. You got the Democrats and the Republican, and both of them have been dominated primarily by Judeo-Christian beliefs. No other gods were allowed in, you know. It was either, and both sides would kill you, you know. It always amazes me, politicians who lie and yet say they're Christian. Well, they're a goddamn liar. And here's what they don't understand. This God has cursed them. We understand this God. This God curses things. But anyway, I digress. And by the way, this God would be the Judeo-Abrahamic deity. And I'm watching what's happening within this party. And hear me out on folks. And if you don't like politics, we'll just tune out. You know, I'll get into the rest of it, but I think this is important. So the makeup now of the party platform, this is strange, folks. The Hindu gods are now a part of the Republican Party. No bullshit. If you study the profiles of who is now heading up the ticket, and the head of the ticket is representative of the whole, that's how it works. And when I saw the fact that now there are a number of key people in key positions who are Hindus, wonderful. Because this brings into play not just one deity anymore. Now what's coming into play, think about this, folks. You're having deities that far outlive the Abrahamic deity. They've been around much longer. And let me ask you, folks, those of you who've studied Hinduism, we've studied it a little bit here. If you have the favor of the Hindu gods, what do you think happens? Well, you see, it's where we got our stories. The Greek got their stories of immortality, a mortal being granted immortality. And if you believe the book that we're reading right now, it's about an individual named Enoch who tasted not death. He became immortal. So the fact that that can happen, even if it's a legend, a myth, they're all based on a fragment of truth. So my point is, in American politics is changing. And if these Hindu gods find one mortal human that they particularly will show their favor upon, wow. So that may be a little deep, maybe a little too far out for some of you, but I know that there are enough in here that can really see into what I'm saying is going on here. This is a big thing. Things have changed. And, you know, we'll just leave it at that. But this is why I love looking at things from the occultic point of view. When that was shown to me as I was watching this unfolding, I turned to my wife and I said, "Hon," I said, "let's just pause it here. This is a big deal. I mean, you're bringing, and we're going to get into a study of the Hindu gods. And if you know anyone who is proficient in it, send them to me. Love to have them on because these gods are now in play. You see, when you have a key political part individual who brings a different set of beliefs, but of the same values, it's impactful, folks. It's impactful. Hey, Gaia, what's up? Bonnie says, my God can beat up your God. uh, so it's a big deal, folks. It really is, because it is a truly, I don't know if many of you remember this, but on 2011, two significant events happened. And one was the earthquake in the Delmar Peninsula, that area there, that cracked the Washington Monument, the monolith, the power beacon. It was cracked. And the same thing happened in New York City. And of all places, right there on the corner of Wall and Broad. Now, I was in the process of leaving the Christian religion, but I was trained in prophecy. I mean, you just don't put that aside. It's always in there, uh, being mixed into the stew. And so, and prophecies, from what I have learned, are never, very rarely is it like that. They always take time. Why? Because you're speaking something that doesn't exist as though it does, calling those things that be not as though they are. So, yeah, I'm just reading some of the comments. So, anyway, there you go. Things are happening. Big, 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 big things. And it's pretty much the back channel talk is something else is about to happen. I don't know if it's a cyber attack, a dirty bomb, or something, but their attempts on Saturday failed, and now they go to plan B. And when you start mixing in the other gods, I often think of how these mortal men or women that are in these plots, that what's going on in their heads. I mean, your head has to be in a really strange place where you want to take out your political opponent. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in anything. These are humans. This is, someone said there's three types of human. There is a type of human that doesn't care. They're not the same as many of us on the inside. They look at history as their opportunity to inject themselves into it and to change or to alter. I mean, any political platform, any religious theology, that's what it's about. It's about changing reality. And we're so caught up in it. Judith Kuba, over at Night Flight Radio, going to be on with her this afternoon. I'm going to be on with Chris Matthew, with Forbidden Knowledge. And we're going to be talking about this. What I think is the number one threat facing our country, and it's not what probably you think. So, um, isn't that interesting, Stephanie? Yeah, that's very interesting. Your daughter had that dream. So let's get into this. Um, Almost 18 minutes into it. So check this out. Okay, let me go over there. Do da, do da, do da da. There I be. Um, so watching myself, and I'm going, hey, I'm so confused. All right, so this, depending on who and what you believe, um, this is where God lives. This is where heaven is. This is the home of what we're studying, the fallen angels. And of course, it then brings up, the whole thing with the Anunnaki, Anunnaki. But depending on who and what you believe, in this particular book, which unfortunately it's out of print. Let me get it over here. There we go. So I would say you should get it into your library, but it's it's out of print. But this is a fabulous book. It's loaded with archaeological finds that back up the tablets and where this individual got the information. And this is about the fallen angels, the watchers. Folks, they were gods. That's what they don't teach. That's part of the occult aspect of it. These fallen angels were gods. We have incorporated them into our modern day beliefs. Jesus, Savior, angels, demons, Satan. This goes back. And today, man is foolishly been uh, indoctrinated to the point where, we have this monotheistic belief system that has taken over the world. It's not true. All the evidence points to there were many gods, and the Greeks, Babylonians, Sumerians. We should learn from them what this was. And now, people in the intellectual community used to believe that, well, that was just their belief system. They had their religious beliefs. None of it was really based in reality. But that's the problem, and that's where it ended for them. But an intelligent mind goes, no, 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 wait a minute. What if, you know, what if these were actual physical beings that had the ability of what Gene Roddenberry showed? That you had the ability that you could phase out or phase in. If you're a fan of Skinwalker Ranch, you know what's going on out there. Something is out there that can phase in and phase out. So this is where God lives. This is where the fallen angels come from, according to certain ancient documents. And today we all know that Sirius, Canis Major is, big. So I just wanted to throw that out there for all those inquisitive minds. So as we continue on with this journey, so we're dealing with the time before Noah. So what was that time like? When we read in the Book of Enoch about the 4,500 links, it's actually 4,500 cubits. And there's two cubits. There's the standard cubit, which is basically from here to here. And then there's the royal cubit. It's about 18 inches. So if you have a humanoid being, hybrid, that is 4,500 cubits tall, holy shit, ho, 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 green giant, you're going, it's incorporated. And so growing up as a kid, I knew who the green giant was. Green giant was the god over all the vegetation of the world. Strange little shit, isn't it? Oh, yes, yes. Well, I don't happen to believe in that, Mr. Steiger. That's okay. Just sit down, sit back, take a deep toke, breathe out slowly, let your mind go, and your body will follow. Okay. As we continue on as the days of our lives. So let's get over into some fun documents as we continue to move on. By the way, wanted just to give this to a little folks. When we talk about creating things, I mean, what we're reading about is a time when these beings had the ability to manipulate matter on a level that us humans were going, blah, 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 blah. We didn't even know what the fuck they were doing. We worshiped them as we do today, but the simplicity of what most people think God is. Anyway, um, so this is manifesting. I want to just read this real quick. So things that we know that you may have forgotten, which are important for you to remember. And we're going to get into this a little bit down the road here. But number one, the power of feeling good now. You only hear what you are ready to hear. So if you're hearing this, obviously you're ready. We are keeping our promise. We are reminding you that you said, I will live in joy. We know who you are. There's nothing that you cannot do or have. You do create your own reality. The basis of your life is absolute freedom. No one else can create it in your experience, you are an internal being in a physical form. So, just so you know. Now, in this particular lovely little paper, and I introduced this thing, I think, about a year ago. It's the god of plunder, the predators and prey. And what's interesting on this one is that this author brings out we humans. Now, I don't know if this extends to external supernatural beings of extraterrestrial origins, but we do know that we have the ability to create egregores. We created one that's still around called Gift. And if you find out, go and visit it. It's lonely. A thought form golem whose entire power favors the kings of the earth. Now we're talking about the time before, during Noah. And I wanted to get into this next one. Here we go. This is interesting. Now, is this true? Who knows? Who knows what is true, what isn't? That's the problem with the digital age. We're a species that's totally confused now. I'm so confused. All right, fallen angels in the days of Noah, getting right to the specific. So the Bible, all right, because it tells us so. And again, you have your own point of view on that. And tells us of an incredible event that happened during the days of Noah. Now, Noah is spoken about in many different cultures. This, because that the Bible has hijacked Noah, doesn't mean that that is the right Noah. There is the belief that Noah was taken up in a spacecraft, that there were not 2 by 2 of every animal, because that's just very hard to accept. But if you look at it carrying genetic specimens, then you wouldn't need a very big craft at all. And there are those who believe that we spotted Noah's Ark on the dark side of the moon. It crashed. Or they can actually say it was probably placed there. Because if you have beings that would tell Noah to build a boat, and it still answers the old question, why wasn't this God powerful enough just to go ahead and said, hey, Noah, don't worry about it. I got the accommodation. No, takes 120 freaking years, right? But anyway, so if you think about Noah as basically an adopted human, or maybe he actually was ordained to, his bloodline was pure, and we're going to find out that that plays a big deal. So maybe he and his kind wouldn't need to be very many of them. They were the ark that carried the genetic specimens to repopulate the earth. All right. This event was one of the main causes why God needed to flood the earth and kill all living things. Chapter 6 in the book of Genesis tells us about a group of angels referred to as the sons of God in the Old Testament. Testament meaning covenant, right? Which then implies that if there was this old covenant, why would there ever be the need for a new covenant? Because in the legal world, then you just violated the first terms of our covenant. Anyway, digress. That saw how beautiful human women were, so they left their first estate in the spiritual realm and came to earth in order to commit a horrible sin of adultery between angels and human. And let's just use the word adultery there. In order to commit adultery in the legal sense of the word, you have to have two adults, individuals, that are already in covenants with others or other ones, and they decide to have coitus which then violates the contract, the covenant they had here, which makes them adulterers. Burn in hell for that shit, right? Now, it's interesting, if that legal sense exists between humans, then what does it mean about angels? Does it imply that angels have a first covenant of some sort? And then you got to figure out, well, did they actually have genitalia? And what is it that if the universe never had women, and if you look at the female anatomy, so you're telling me in all of the universe there's no other species that have tits or vaginas? It was only here? Wow. Talk about isolism. Anyway, these are the fallen angels. These angels also referred to as the watchers. Apparently, they had the task of watching over mankind, and they could not control their lustful urges when they saw how beautiful women were. Were they warriors? Obviously. I mean, lustful urges. Well, then that would imply emotion. Now, there was an episode on Star Trek Next Generation that was titled Who Are the Watchers? And in that episode, you had human beings from Starfleet that were observing the humanins on this planet. And they had cloaking technology. Again, is this what we're talking about? Is it something just that simple? That apparently there is this complex social structure, culture that exists on another planet, another star. Because if you think about heaven, then what you're saying is that we're basically engulfed in something that's even bigger than ourselves. And our perception is that when you die, your little soul is either going to go up or it's going to go down. Well, that becomes a debate. And so you're telling me in the spirit realm that there's an up and a down? I mean, I still question myself, why ghosts wear clothes and why do they walk on the floors? Why would they need floors? Anyway, I digress. And then they saw beautiful women. I mean, for you women, I mean, come on, y'all got the stuff. You got the stuff that the whole fucking neighborhood, meaning the freaking galaxy. You human women. Wow. So anyway, getting back to the orgy at hand, this apparently was a time. Now, what we're not told and not spoken about are the great cities. The stories are, it was that during this time, advanced technology was everywhere. They were teaching humans alchemy. They were teaching them alloys, how on different metals. Now, if you read the standard archaeology, well, no, we came out of the Bronze Age and then we went into the Iron Age and, no, that's where we rebuilt from. But anyway, the story goes as the days of Noah. So we got to get a time frame, right? What time are we talking about on the planet? It says during the first 1500 years after God created heaven and earth. So the Jewish calendar says that is, I think it's 35, 34, 35, 36 BC. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't remember. But anyway, I guess a starting line is just merely a starting line to whoever perceives it as a starting line. It said people lived to be nearly 1,000 years old. And I like this. The reason why I brought this, it says several examples of how many years people lived to be included: Adam 930, Seth supposedly 912, Kenan 910, Methuselah 969, Noah 950 years. Things were very different in those days for several reasons, including, and I thought this was really interesting, the human genetics, and give me 1 second here as I go over here. Thank you. Were pure because Adam and Eve were created in a pristine state, which allowed interfamilial breeding without problems for many generations. In other words, incest. And again, now I don't know if you wrote this 150 years ago, would the common man, person, woman reading this say, well, all right, genetics. Today, it has a whole different meaning for us. We understand DNA. We understand the mRNA. We get that. So you have somehow or another these pristine bloodlines. I mean, how that came about is, we'll delve into that because it appears everything on our future as Saturday, where things were altered in space-time, this would have been the same type of thing. Now, this is interesting. It says the ground had been cursed by God only about 1,000 years earlier, so it probably took some time for plant disease to form and spread. I can't get into this thing of paying homage, worship, praising a God that I know can just as easily curse you. And he's proved that, it's immature. Lilith was right. This is an incomplete, imperfected deity. Marduk? There was little man-made pollution to poison the soil, the water supplies, or the people. So think about this. So it gives you the idea that apparently there was a lot of sex going on. And was the human gestation 9 months? I don't know. But apparently we love banging one another. I mean, it's the only way this is how this story works. It says people apparently ate only nuts, berries, fruits, and vegetables at this time. After the flood, God put the fear of man into the animals and allowed man to eat meat. I could go on for hours on this alone. Like, what? Do you know how many geneticists say that there is a number of diseases, cancers, that we can contribute to when man became carnivores? I mean, the whole thing of one animal eating the meat, the flesh of another. I mean, you get the blood thing going in, and I mean, it's wow. And why would an all-knowing being do that? I mean, if the first way was the best way, why would we become into this thing that it was the cause of our disease? It said it never rained on the earth before Noah's flood. This indicates that there was probably a water or vapor barrier. As I was taught, there was this mist that had formed right at the 3 o'clock hour in the morning, surrounding the earth that would have protected the people from harmful solar radiation. Again, we can go back now to an alien sky and the Thunderbolts Project and others, in fact, the Colburn Bible, the Bronze Books, and now where they've all mentioned the fact that the sun is not our friend. All right, and we know what it does. Free radicals destroys our DNA. That's what makes us go old. So kind of a real paradise thing, right? And this is their references, Genesis 2:4 and 2:5. So today, the average lifespan is 75 years, and we have approximately 7 billion people on Earth. I don't know who's keeping the clicker, but they're saying we're close to get there in the next 10 years or so to 8. I don't know, because you got countries now like China, Japan, the United States that are trying to incentivize young couples to have children. Our species is slowing down in replacing the dead folks. All right, let's continue on. With people living 1,000 years, the capability of men and women to have many children and very little disease. That sounds to me like the garden. I want to go back to Woodstock, man. Come on. It's possible that the earth became extremely polluted within, get this, 1,500 years before the flood. Based on average growth rate calculations, estimates range between 1 billion to upwards to 3 billion. Now, if you have a population of the world that's now into the billions, you can't tell me that we were so regressed that we're still nomadic. No. I believe we had electricity. Believe we had plumbing. I think we had running. We know the Romans did. We know that they had batteries back in Babylon, electrical batteries. Some say that's what the Ark of the Covenant was, really a giant battery. But anyway, it should be very clear that Earth was not just a few thousand people huddled in tents. It was probably a thriving planet filled with huge societies. Let's see. We can also remember that God had not given his law, the Mosaic law, to mankind. So again, it was to a tribe, wasn't to mankind. You know, Goyams have no right to the 10 Commandments. It was never written for them. It was written for the Hebrews. Oh, well, now you're going to get technical on us. Yeah. All right. So these people were living in a lawless world. Oh, like today? Like always? Show me a time in our world when it wasn't lawless. Surely there were some sort of good and bad, you think, that had been defined by leaders, you think? We have the Sumerian tablets that were before the flood. We know they did this. And again, we're talking about the continent of India. How about the continent of China? I mean, these societies predated the Arabs, the Hebrews, by thousands, if not 5,000 to 10,000 years. Says, however, there was no godly basis to start from which could have resulted in the horribly perverted rules and regulation. Well, this sounds like, a current presidential administration, horribly perverted and perverting the rules and regulations. An unbelievable evil societal structures. Well, how evil can evil be? And why do we think it's evil? We weren't part of these societies. We weren't part of these cultures. How dare us? It shows you the arrogance that we look back on and thinking, well, them dumbasses, they don't know shit. Well, no, they're looking at us on the other side going, you're the dumbass and you don't know crap. Let's see. On top of all this stuff, we must forget that Satan, well, we got a problem here because we don't read about Satan in these other cultures. Not even close. But anyway, I digress. He was really hardworking. Oh. Does that imply that he's also a lazy son of a bitch? I mean, what happens if he's not working hard? What, is he fluffing off on the job? Trying to destroy God's creation. Anyway, my whole point to this was to get into the fact that there was this mass of humanity traveling around the world. I believe that they had ships that could traverse in the air. The Hindus tell us that's what the Varamas were. So this flood, this event, it's written about in every culture. Was it the passing of this brown dwarf star? Was it a collision of some other point? We know that the Earth was tilted on its axis. We know that as a result of this, that some debate is whether it stayed on its axis or after a period of less than a couple of years, it swung back to its normal position. But in any case, while all this was going on, we have this effect that we're told is the sons of God walking on this planet. Now, there is plenty evidence to show that the planet was big, really big. We have evidence of trees with the base of their circumferences being miles. And you can only imagine what a tree that would exceed Jack and the Beanstalk. And that's where those type of legends come from. So these giants, the Smithsonian Institution was a client of mine for a number of years. We got the evidence. We know that they were there. I worked with the filmmaker that did the story on the documentary of the Alton Giant, Robert Kudlow. And so we have this gene that's still in us that, when it's in the right conditions, can produce gargantuism within humans. Now, apparently, the Nephilim, which there has been plenty written about, I've done a number of shows over the decade on this, that we find that they existed. Now, I brought this one out because this is interesting. It's one of the ones that has always been one of those things that, and so we have this problem with Cain. Now, up until this time, this bloodline was not contaminated unless you look at Eve or Lilith, because Lilith and Eve may be one the same, and maybe the same incident happened to both of them and were raped. Or they had consensual sex with a non-human species. And it begs to bring that question because it's Cain. It says the descendants of Seth are called the sons of God on account of the righteous men and patriarchs who have sprung from him. Bloodlines, even down to the Savior, the Jesus character, bloodlines. And the thing with the Jesus thing, we now know that if that story is true, then there was an alien insemination. And if it wasn't physical sex between Mary and this Holy Spirit, then the laws, the physical laws, were violated. And or it leads to where she was abducted, put into an environment, an operating room, where she was embedded surgically, inseminated. There's only very few possibilities in here. Anyway, I digress. But the descendants of Cain are named the seed of men as having nothing divine in them on account of the wickedness of their race and the inequality of their nature, being a mixed people and having stirred the indignation of God. So we have another class of humans that walk on this planet that have the mark on them. They're cursed. This curse has never been removed. Like, you can't show me a book and anywhere in the canonical scriptures or even the pseudo-apocrypha where this curse has been lifted. So you have a separate class of human beings. Now, it's interesting how that genetic marker shows up, but by this, in the Bible, if you look at this with a different set of eyes, you're going, huh. So we have two races within the same species here, all dealing with bloodlines. is that in this view, Cain's lineage is considered evil or condemned because it came from the first murderer, and his legacy laid to Lamech, another murderer and polygamist. Really? Well, where the hell does Solomon fit in that one? So in contrast, Seth's lineage is considered elect or chosen by God and marked by God because he replaced the bloodline of the innocent, righteous victim Abel. Now, that just brings up all sorts of questions. So here it's clear, if you believe the words, that we now have two different types of human, and there's a third. The third would be the introduction of an alien DNA strain into us, bringing the three classes of different humans. Now, over the millennia, with the way humans are, we have so intermixed the bloodlines. I really doubt if there's any pure bloodlines left. I don't believe that. I think that that's more mythological than actuality. Not to say that there are not bloodlines that have been established, but then again, you can bring it down then to what type of human is this? And it appears that they're all marked. Seems like we all have a mark upon us if you believe the narrative. Wow, where does the time go? Okay, I want to bring in the last part because as we go continued into the Book of Enoch, we're going to be referencing this book. This is the book of Anu, Ana, and Ki, the book of Anunnaki. Myth, legend, don't think so. Seems like they have a little bit more to say on the story than what most cared about. They don't want a lot of this. They don't want out. So anyway, we'll pick back up. I mean, on on the our book, if I could actually find it again. So there we go. Let's see. Gets out of there. I was looking at something. So interesting aspect of it. So the days of Noah, as we continue into this, were the days of really, we would call it very strange. We would call it where the paranormal was normal. The supernatural was not so super. Appears that humans knew these other beings. These other beings were not omnipotent, omnipotent, but they were gods, no doubt. Goddesses, I have no. But then that kind of brings up the whole question then, if the woman, the female woman, was the cause of this other species to transgress their laws, surely there has to have been females. And that implies that the angels would only be one sex. And we know, depending on your point of view, that they're hermaphrodites. They're both male and female. So some say androgynous. I don't believe that. I don't think that that's the case. But some believe that that was Adam initially. It was an androgynous being, and then they split the sexes up. I love this. What do you do with the knowledge? Well, it's certainly fun to keep in your pipe and smoke on it, that's for sure. Well, thank you, Stephanie. So as we get to wrap this up, so there was an advanced societies. I believe that they were space travelers. I believe that they had the ability to go to the other planets. Don't think that was a big deal for them. I think they had ways in which to do that. It's very evident depending on which document, but you're looking at the Sumerian cylinder scrolls, it appears that the Earth and the moon had a much more, that there were actually beings on the moon. Crazy, isn't it? But apparently the story goes as well, is that these beings were the ones that caused the conflict in the inner planets. That there was a separate kingdom on Mars, that depending on how you look at it, there was another planet. Tiamat, the water giant, depends on how your point of view. Something happened. Something that some believe is cyclical. As in the days of Noah shall it be in the end of days. Well, then that would imply that we got to get our head back into this. So, number one, it tells me that we need to probably, and we're probably pretty well prepared for this, that there are in fact beings that have ships that can actually penetrate our atmosphere and have the ability to go out into the cosmos, if not the solar system beyond. All right. They know that these beings have the ability to be supernatural in their aspect. They seem to be multidimensional. They seem to have the ability to alter our space-time. And it appears that they have been here before, and some would suggest they never left. But again, we look on these thousands of years as a long period of time. To them, it's not. To them, it most likely in all reality would be the equivalent of maybe a decade or less. It appears that they don't give up. They will not relinquish this planet. Seems like Earth is a high prize in this galactic structure. And it seems that our species have been manipulated consistently. If you believe on the certain intellectual point of view that we are in fact the sixth great civilization, we all have failed. We've all collapsed. That brings us back to the Matrix 2, where the architect told Neo, listen, we made the planet perfect for you. We not only did it once, we've done it innumerable amount of times. Your species cannot live in peace. You cannot live with one another. You must have conflict. You must have war. And therefore, we have created a simulation to where you will always have war. You will seek for peace, but never find it. You will seek to have the reconciliation of one another, but it will always be just out of the reach. Times of Noah. For thousands and thousands of years, men were probably more agrarian in their nature, and that didn't require a lot of mental capacity. Was that purposely? They called it the Dark Ages for a reason, and that Dark Age surrounded this planet. It infected every aspect of the so-called collective consciousness, as in the days of Noah. As in the days of Noah, the veil between one reality and dimension was very thin, if it did not exist at all. It is through this an event that there was a barrier put up. It is now spoken that when that barrier becomes back down, that this would be another indication. I would say that we probably are, if we're not on the prefaces of it, I think we're very close. So, there you go. And we didn't even get back to our book, but as in the days of Noah. Again, we miss so much. I see the stories that are propagating out there, and you can really see the difference of types of humans. It's right there. But no one wants to believe that. Let's see. Anunnaki says, like the days of Noah, but with fire in the solar complex. Yeah, yeah. Listen, the Egyptians told us this thing's coming back. And who knows if the initial alien intrusion into our species was not because of a certain configuration that our solar system was in. And I say this, mankind cannot see what's coming. We don't have the technology of the ability to see where our universe, our solar system is moving into. We have no idea what's about to happen. And it would appear that we've moved into a very dusty cloud in which now the so-called experts, never a straight answer agency, says that, well, it seems like things have gotten pretty dusty in our solar system. Really? Okay, everybody. Much love to you. Look forward to see you tomorrow. We'll pick this up because it's exciting, folks. When you really get into it, we're going to get our minds and we're going to begin to imagine what it was like. Each one of us plays a role in this time frame. That's what I loved about theater. Once you get your character and you start building your character, you're building your egregore. And I believe that we have the ability that it will show us the snippets. They weren't ignorant people back then. They were highly intelligent. I'm convinced they had computers. I'm convinced they had mobile communication devices. Why wouldn't they? What, do you think it's just us that would have a cell phone? No, I think they had advanced communications. All right, everybody. Nina has her show later on. I don't know if it's on Patreon or where, but check it out. Hey, Gaia, much love to you. Lost in Space, thank you. Grace, Deborah, and all of you. Rick, good to see you. Brother, off the hook, good to see you as well. So think about it. And I wish I knew where Chris was at. I don't know, but I put it in Forbidden Knowledge. You'll see that. Be with him in about an hour. Millie, thank you so much. Multi resets. Yes, Lost in Space. It is true. Paradoxal Follows. How are you doing? Good to see you, Jackie. All right. Goddess Sabina, Chris, everybody else. Much love until we see each other again.